Hello, everybody. I'm Andrew Nolan, and I will also be talking about WebMCP explained tonight. You're going to hear a lot about WebMCP today, and that's because we feel like it is an important improvement to the agentic web. Like you heard from Ben, this is an important part of the story for developers as they start to think about websites for the agentic web. And we hope that coming out of this presentation, you consider what this API might be able to do for your website or your customers, or how you will use it to onboard to the agentic web. I am the AC rep for Microsoft, along with Mike Jackson. I've been building websites for over 20 years. And at my time at Microsoft, I've mostly spent it working on products that serve developers. I also wrote the initial explainer for WebMCP, then called Web Model Context, with Brandon Walderman in 2025. And it's great to be here presenting to you today. Just a quick note before we get started. Obviously, Microsoft is a very large company, and we're working on a lot of different AI and agentic initiatives. I don't want to give the impression that I'm speaking on behalf of all of those teams. And likewise, WebMCP is a robust collaboration in the WebML community group and also the Chromium open source project. I don't want to imply that I'm speaking on behalf of those groups either. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. What is agentic browsing? Obviously, there could be many definitions for what agentic browsing could be. This is kind of how I think about it. It's autonomous task completion on the web on behalf of a human. It's got someone on the other end, and they are using a web browser to enjoy the web and complete tasks for them to get value from it. Many browsers are now shipping with agent modes. Microsoft Edge has one as well, and Copilot mode and agent mode. And these work by going to websites as similar to what Ben described and navigating that site to be able to help fulfill the customer's task. There's primarily three ways that they do this. One is through the document object model, and the other is through the accessibility tree. Document object model is obviously sort of looking through the HTML to figure out what should the agent click, how should it interact with the web page. Similarly, accessibility trees tend to work a bit better, but it does rely on a developer filling out the accessibility tree, which unfortunately not many developers have. It's a separate topic, but that's something that I hope that AI can help with in the future as well. These two methods, from my understanding, are mostly theoretical. I'm not aware of a major browser using these technologies to navigate the web. By far, the most used technology for an agentic web is the screenshot technique. This is where the agent and the AI is continuously taking screenshots of the screen. It's sending it to the model to figure out where does it need to click. In this example, someone might be trying to register a driver's license, for example, for their vehicle. It's going to go to this website, it's going to be taking a lot of screenshots, and it's going to be trying to figure out what to do next to be able to help the user complete their task. This screenshot technique has gotten much better in recent years. It's actually quite good. However, there are some concerns as well. One is performance. Sometimes it's just slower than clicking around on a website. Obviously, there's considerations like accuracy and the capability. The agent can't do anything that wouldn't normally be on the screen, even though the developer might want the agent to be able to do something different if they're in some kind of agent mode. And then, of course, there are some settings where customers may be concerned about privacy, taking screenshots of that screen and sending it to the AI for analysis, even if it's done in a secure way. And then finally, at a higher level point, is developer involvement. This technique does not include the developer. And we know from experience that when developers are given the tools to build great websites, they build a better web for everyone. So this led us to the question of how can web developers participate in the agentic web? We looked at a number of technologies. I won't list all of them here, but these were a few that stood out to us. There's LLM.txt. This is a very simple text file, kind of imagined after robots.txt, but this didn't really change the capability of the agent. There's also the A2A proposal and protocol, which Microsoft is a supporter of. However, this is more for agent to agent interaction, not really for a user on a web browser using an agent. Probably the most robust conversation we had was around APIs. If web developers already have a number of APIs that help run their website, perhaps AI could just get really good at understanding these APIs and then doing something based on that. However, we felt like developers aren't used to APIs being used in this way. And also, we were worried that agents would have to build one-off solution for every single website because there isn't that middle layer that allows it to speak a common language. And then finally, we looked at Model Context Protocol, MCP, which is what WebMCP is based off of in spirit. MCP has obviously received a lot of developer excitement in the community, and it allows different kind of capabilities, especially for backend technology. However, it requires a developer to have a server running. It's written in backend technologies, which web developers maybe aren't as used to. And then finally, for websites in particular, auth and state management are quite difficult because it's somewhat separated from the web UI itself. And so because of these, we felt like we needed something new on the web. We needed something new in the web platform to offer to web developers to build websites for agents. And that's when we proposed the WebMCP API. As I mentioned earlier, this is being incubated in the W3C WebML community group. It allows developers to define tools imperatively with JavaScript or declaratively. The browser acts as an MCP server for an agent. So in this case, the web developer doesn't even need to run a MCP-like server for their website to be onboarded to the agentic web. It's for human in the loop, so it can use the smarts of the AI and the LLM working collaboratively with the web developer and the website to build a better experience for the end user. And as I mentioned, this is a robust collaboration, the W3C and the Chromium open source project with people from Microsoft, Google, and more. I wanted to just briefly call out some names: Brandon, Dominic, Kushal, Leo, Sushant, Soham, Victor, Ben, who we heard from earlier, Penelope, also Anzi, our amazing WebML chair, and Alex Nahas. I want to say a big thank you to this group of people that has brought this API to life and continues to do so. We are completely humbled and excited by the community's enthusiastic response to the API so far. This is just a very brief overview of how one would implement this. It looks like a lot of words, but it's actually quite simple. All a developer has to do is define their tools. They give it a name, they give it a description of what it should do, an input schema, and then what's not shown on the screen is what it should do next. So in this case, the developer could even build custom UI that's maybe a little different for the agent compared to people that are using a traditional keyboard, mouse, or screen reader, whatever it may be. And we seem to be on to something. As I mentioned, we're completely amazed at the community's enthusiasm for the API. People are mentioning that it is a huge addition, a huge improvement to the web platform for interacting with AI. And there's lots of conversation going on. And I've seen a lot of amazing demos on social media of people that are so excited to be thinking about how to bring their website to the agentic web. There are open topics. Obviously, security is a big one. One that comes to mind is the trusting of tools. If a tool says it does one thing but actually does the other, that is not good for users. Accessibility as well. So the API itself does not necessarily have to be used by agents. It could be used by other software and technologies as well, like screen readers, for example, but potentially others. We're also discussing if there's a need for common tools, maybe like a search tool or an add to cart tool. And then finally, discoverability. The API specifically puts us as out of scope, but this is a conversation that we continue to have, including in other open source projects as well. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I'm excited to be part of the panel, and please do reach out if you have any additional questions about WebMCP. or want to discuss your website on the agentic web. Thank you.